So you want to install a pickleball court at your property? Well, don't. Until you finish watching this video anyway. Because yeah, I've had a few installed over the last year, and I wish I had known a few things before I got into this whole mess, but now I do, and I think I'm finally at a place where A, I can give you some pretty solid insight and advice, and B, I don't have a B because I'm winded. Why did I do this to myself? One serve. But whether you want to install a pickleball court at your primary residence or at an Airbnb where you want to boost revenue, I've got 12 tips for you that will save you time, money, effort, energy, heartache, heartbreak. On today's episode, Robuilt. The first thing I want to talk about is the proper sizing of a pickleball court. This might seem like a pretty standard pickleball court, and it is kind of. A regulation pickleball court is 20 by 44 feet. And so when I was getting this pickleball court installed, I told my contractor, well, we'll need a little bit of extra space to play, so why don't we give ourselves 2 feet on each side and an extra 5 feet on the front and the back, bringing my total pickleball court size to 24 by 54 feet, and I thought that was enough. But what we didn't know is that you actually need a little bit more space than that, and I'll tell you why. So check this out. You can kind of see there's a little bit of space right here. Well, because I'm not on perfectly flat ground, one thing I didn't account for was the fact that, if you're really playing, you might have to step off. So knowing that, we actually did more research and found out that even though a pickleball court is 20 by 44 feet, the actual court size should be 30 by 60, not 24 by 54, which is what we did. And it's caused a little bit of a disruption because we've had to go and add gravel and grade it a little bit around the side. But it's one of those things that you should definitely know and account for, and you don't want to cut costs on concrete when you're doing this. Mostly because you want to have a safe playing size, and if you can't afford the extra concrete, then you can't afford the lawsuit. Number 2 thing I wish I had known is the cost. You think it's just going to be concrete, and concrete's pretty cheap, but not really at the scale of a pickleball court. I mean, just mathing that out, you're looking at 30 by 60 feet should be 1,800 square feet, but also your pad has to be pretty thick too, so the volume of concrete is quite high, and the cost, just the cost of concrete, comes out to $8 to $9 per square foot. So let's just math that out at $8.50. The pure cost of concrete for a pickleball court, if you're doing it the right way, is going to come out to $15,300. And that is just the concrete. It does not include the paint, it does not include the labor. The labor is expensive. The paint isn't just typical Sherwin-Williams or Behr paint. It's acrylic paint that is specially formulated for pickleball courts, and it's really, really, really expensive. And on top of that, if you're in a residential area like I am, you don't want a ton of pickleballs flying over the fence, A, because it's expensive, B, because it's gonna annoy your neighbors. So you really do have to take into consideration some kind of fencing mechanism as well. And then you've got the net. I've got surface mounted nets here. That alone could be $500 to $800. The fencing, the paint, the labor, the actual cost of the concrete, the forms for the concrete. You're looking at about $25,000 to $40,000 to properly and professionally get a contracted pickleball court. Now, of course, if you were to self-contract it and sub it all out yourself, you could definitely save some money. But if you're like, I ain't about that life, and you're gonna hire it out, 25 to 40 grand is what you can expect to pay. Another thing I wish I'd considered was that, in Texas it does rain. It's hot, but it does rain every so often. You wanna make sure that the grading on your pickleball court is perfect. Otherwise, it's gonna pool up and you'll have to sweep it. You'll have to do something to get it clean, because if you don't, it could stain. This is an Airbnb that I'm at, and I haven't had guests in like a week, and I had just this nasty brown puddle right here. And you can't really tell now. Well, actually, I guess you can kind of tell, but the water was just sitting here for like a week and it stained it, which is kind of a bummer because my beautiful new pickleball court already has some water stains going on. So keep a push broom like this handy, because you're gonna have to be sweeping off a lot of water if you don't have a perfectly leveled and sloped pickleball court. The fourth thing, I think, going back to the fencing, you can kind of see it here, right? This is 4-foot fencing, but if you are next to neighbors, as I talked about, you're gonna need higher fencing. This is 8-foot fencing, and I honestly wish I would have gone for 10-foot fencing. I know it's a small difference, but that extra 2 feet actually makes a huge difference when you're talking about how intense a pickleball game can be. I'm telling you, they fly over pretty often. 8 feet catches like 80–90%, but it's that other 10 to 20% that's very frustrating when it happens. The fifth thing that I wish I had known is that custom colors are very hard. You can hopefully tell that this is a hot pink and baby blue pickleball court, and the reference photo, we'll put it right here. This is what we were going for. This is what we got. This actually looks really great. I'm super happy with it, but the reason I bring it up is that we had to custom mix these colors. My contractor lost a lot of nights of sleep trying to come up with these colors, mixing and remixing and formulating. He was like an alchemist over there to get what we got here, which again looks really, really amazing. But if you have the idea to do these bright and colorful courts, totally fine. Just understand they don't make a paint like that, and so your labor price might go up as your team tries to make this color, and they might mess it up too, and you might have to buy extra paint, which adds to the cost. So keep that in mind. Most paint manufacturers have a set of like 10 to 12 different colors that you can choose from. If you want your life to be easier, choose one of those 10 to 12 colors. 6. While we're here, let's combine 4 and 5. Maybe pick a paint color that's not gonna stain. Bright pink, sitting water, stains very, very easily. But if you had like dark green, dark maroon, anything in that color palette, you're totally fine. But the lighter it is, the more it's gonna stain. Which is honestly kind of a bummer if you spend $25,000 to $40,000 and your pickleball court doesn't even look new for all that long. So really keep this in mind if you care about aesthetics and upkeep. Number 7, upkeep and logistics. One of the things you have to keep in mind if you're gonna have this as an Airbnb amenity, which is the case for all 3 of my pickleball courts, I just talked about the water pooling, I talked about the broom, talked about some of the staining that happened here. Well, you're gonna need someone to pretty consistently come and sweep up and actually take care of the court. You might need someone to come and spray it down. You might need someone to come wash it. At the very least, you wanna leave a leaf blower, a battery operated leaf blower at your property, which is what I do here, so that your guests can actually go around and clean it up. Because if a guest is booking your property specifically because of the pickleball court, I'm gonna tell you right now, they're gonna be super, super bummed and disappointed in the experience if it's covered in leaves. And that's something you have to think about. Now, I think most reasonable people understand we're surrounded by trees. Leaves are gonna fall onto the court, which is why I really advocate for a battery powered leaf blower, so you at least give them the opportunity and the ability to easily clear off your pickleball court. And a push broom too, it's like 12 bucks. Makes a huge difference for people. And on that same note, consider the location of where you're gonna be installing your pickleball court, because as you can kind of see, there's trees right here, literally surrounding the entire pickleball court. Now, I didn't really have an option. This is the only place a pickleball court could have been installed, but sometimes you might have a big lot. I'm gonna tell you, if you can install your pickleball court away from trees where leaves are falling all day and night on it, it's gonna save you some serious upkeep. Number 8, this one is huge. Weather. Weather is gonna impact you really quite a bit at many instances in your journey. Specifically, you can't really pour concrete if it's raining, and that part kind of sucks, but really where weather kills your pickleball project is the paint. If you're trying to paint your pickleball court, if you paint it and then it rains, well, guess what? Your paint job is ruined. But on top of that, what really killed us there for a solid 2-3 weeks was the actual temperature. You cannot paint a pickleball court when it's cold outside because the paint will not dry and cure correctly. And so it really delayed us, and we were getting into the winter when it was gonna be cold very consistently. But because it's Austin, Texas, sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's hot during the winter. You really don't know. And so when we actually painted it, we had no notice. It was like 8 a.m. that day, and my contractor was like, hey, I think it's gonna be above 70, let's go for it. So then they painted it, and they had to create this giant plastic tarp situation that covered this entire court so that leaves wouldn't fall and stick to the paint. Going back to, consider your location, because location, weather, and rain can absolutely kill the timeline of your pickleball court project. 9. I think. This one was kind of a bummer to find out, but whenever you pour a pickleball court, it's not like you can just start painting it. There's a thing called curing with concrete, meaning you pour your concrete, you dry, and it actually needs to get solidified and dry 100%. That is the very layman version of curing, but you have to let the concrete breathe and cure for a total of 30 days or more before you can ever paint it. And I found this out specifically for this court that I'm standing on because it's the first time I'd ever had a concrete slab poured for a pickleball court. The first one I ever did, I got resurfaced. So I'll put you in my mindset. Imagine you get the court poured, you're super excited, you're like, oh my gosh, when can we actually get started painting? And then your contractor's like, well, you gotta wait a month. And then you wait a month and you're super excited, and then it's cold outside and it's rainy and you can't actually paint it because of the weather. That's what you have to be ready for any pickleball court project. It could take you 2 or 3 months before you ever get it done. So plan it out accordingly and in the correct season, because if you have this bright idea during the winter, well, you're probably gonna have to wait till spring. 10th and final tip, I know I said 12, but I think I combined a few, is get ready for touch-ups. As you can see right here, our lines are already starting to kind of crack and break. See that right here? This pickleball court is less than, a month and a half old, 2 months old at the max. So a bit of a bummer, but that's just what happens. You get it painted, you start playing, you're gonna have to come in and do some touch-ups. That's gonna be really hard whenever you go with really custom colors like we did. I'm sure my contractor wrote down the exact formula that he used, but paint is so temperamental that, we may never get these colors exactly like this again. We'll get pretty close, but luckily the touch-ups that we're gonna be doing are on the white lines, and that's a standard color. And I talked to my contractor about it this morning. He's like, hey, I'm gonna go back, and he knew I was here, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna go back and touch patch it up, don't worry about it, before I even said anything, because he said that when he painted it, guess what? It was too cold and rainy, which did lead to some cracking, but no big deal because he's gonna come by and take care of it. But it is something you should plan for. So those are my tips. If you're thinking about doing it yourself, I'm probably gonna say, better not. But if you want to, I guess you can go for it. You'll probably save some money, but where you save money, you will absolutely not be saving yourself time and heartache. I would say it's best to hire a contractor to do this type of thing, but if you were gonna do it yourself and you were gonna paint it yourself and you weren't gonna do the fancy chain link fence, then I think you could probably get this job done anywhere from 18 to 22,000 bucks, which is still pretty high, but much lower than 25 to 40 grand. So you can save money, but I suppose you could still save money by hiring a professional contractor and just telling them not to do this fence. We actually did like a netting system, like a batting cage netting system where we did 4x4 posts. We actually did this at a different property. We got 4x4 posts installed and then we put batting cage netting, which is like a total of 500 bucks to do all that versus $8,000 for what you see here. And then last money saving tip, you don't have to go with the $500 to $800 surface mounted net. You could just buy a net off of Amazon that you can assemble and put in a bag, and that's like 80 to 100 bucks. That right there could save you a ton of money. Oh, and one final little thing, when it comes to paddles, invest in the good stuff. Doug from Bread and Butter sent me these. These are the Filth paddles. Best pickleball paddles I've ever played on. Not a sponsored ad, just genuinely really like the product. Okay, that's it. If this video was helpful, hit the like button and the subscribe button, and any questions that you have in the comments below, I'll try to answer them. If I can't, I'll ask my contractor to answer them, which I'm sure he'll do. So catch you on the next episode of Robuilt. See ya.